Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into a piece of ancient writing that feels incredibly immediate. It's the Epistle of James.
Yeah, it's often called the Proverbs of the New Testament.
And you can see why. It's less about abstract doctrine and just, cut straight to how we actually live our lives day to day.
It really does. I mean, James isn't that interested in whether you can recite a perfect creed. His concern is urgent. It's about the practice of belief.
So what's the core problem he's seeing?
Well, he's looking at a community of people who say they believe, but their actions, their words, their financial dealings, they just don't line up.
A total disconnect.
Exactly. The root issue he's diagnosing is spiritual immaturity, a gap between what we say and what we do.
And that feels so relevant. People are really looking for that alignment. So for this deep dive, our mission is to unpack the practical tools James gives for, engaging true faith, handling life's challenges, and mastering our words and desires.
All in a way that actually leads to maturity. That's the goal.
Okay, so where does he start? It's pretty bracing from the get-go, isn't it?
Oh, there's no gentle introduction. He immediately tackles this common idea that a life of faith should be easy.
Right. He basically says the Christian life isn't a spiritual retreat. It's not a protected greenhouse.
It's a battlefield. And he lays out a few fundamental truths about these challenges or trials. First, and this is so important, they are compatible with faith.
You can be a deeply faithful person and still be suffering. In fact, Jesus and Paul pretty much guaranteed it.
100%. Second, the trials are varied. The Greek word he uses, poikilos, means multicolored.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, think of it like a mosaic. You have financial trials, health trials, relationship stress, all these different colors. God weaves them together, and for every color of trial, there's a corresponding grace.
And thankfully, he also says they're temporary.
They're temporary. You're just passing through. And maybe most importantly, they are pedagogical. They teach us something.
They have a purpose.
They have a purpose. They're designed to test our faith to produce perseverance. And that quality, that hupomone, is what leads to maturity.
So how are we supposed to respond to something that's often painful? James says something completely counterintuitive.
He does. He says to consider it great joy.
Which sounds impossible. I mean, who feels joyful when they're suffering?
And that's the key. He's not telling you to enjoy the pain itself. That's not natural. The joy he's talking about is a confidence in the result.
So it's joy in the outcome. It's knowing that God is in control and this trial is moving you toward becoming more whole, more complete.
Exactly. But navigating that, especially when you're under pressure, it takes a special kind of discernment. It takes wisdom.
And he has a very specific definition of wisdom, doesn't he? It's not just about knowing a lot of facts.
No, it's not about being a walking encyclopedia of the Bible. He defines it as the correct use of knowledge.
Looking at your life through God's eyes.
That's it, exactly. And the way to get it is almost startlingly simple.
Just ask God for it.
Just ask. He gives generously, without finding fault. But, and this is a huge but, there's a warning against doubt.
The doubting mind. This part is so vivid.
It is. He says the person who prays but doubts is profoundly unstable. He uses two images. First, they're like a wave of the sea, just tossed back and forth between belief and unbelief.
Constantly shifting.
And second, he calls them double-souled or two-minded. It's someone trying to walk on two different roads at the same time.
It's like spiritual hedge betting, right?
Yeah.
You pray, but you also have your own backup plan, just in case God doesn't come through.
That's a perfect way to put it. And that double-mindedness, it completely blocks maturity.
Why is that?
Because maturity requires commitment, a single focus. If you're approaching God saying, I trust you, but also I have to rely on myself, you're paralyzed internally. You can't receive anything.
Okay, so if maturity is the end goal, James gives us a really practical yardstick to measure it, what he calls true religion.
Yes, and it has almost nothing to do with rituals or just reciting doctrines. It's defined by three very active behaviors.
And the first one is about our speech.
It is. The first test is control of the tongue. Can you restrain that quick temper, that loose, careless talk? We'll get into that more later, but it's the number one indicator.
Okay, what's the second?
The second is care for the needy. He specifically mentions orphans and widows.
In that culture, they were the most vulnerable people imaginable.
The most marginalized. And this isn't just about, writing a check. It's about visiting them, being present in their distress. It's the essential expression of your faith.
And the third test?
Personal purity. Keeping yourself uncontaminated by the world's system of values.
Resisting things like consumerism or envy, the things our culture often promotes.
Exactly. And the tool he gives us to assess all this is the Word of God, which he compares to a mirror.
I love this analogy. The danger isn't just seeing the flaw in the mirror.
No, the danger is looking in, seeing something that's wrong, some part of your character that's a mess, and then just walking away and forgetting.
Or worse, deciding it's not worth the effort to fix.
And that, he says, is self-deception. The only way to freedom, to real blessing, is to actually do what the Word says. Practice it.
This naturally leads us into maybe the most famous and most controversial part of the letter, the whole faith versus works thing.
Yes. This is the section that gave Martin Luther so much trouble. He famously called James an epistle of straw at one point.
Because it seems to contradict Paul, who hammers home that we're justified by faith alone. So how do we square that circle?
I think we resolve it when we realize they're asking two different questions. Paul is asking, how is a person saved?
And the answer is by faith alone.
By faith alone. But James is asking a different question. He's asking, how can you tell if someone's faith is genuine? How is saving faith recognized?
And his answer is by their works.
Exactly. So Paul is talking about the root of salvation. James is talking about the fruit. We are justified before God by our faith, but that faith is justified or proven before other people by our actions.
Saving faith never comes alone.
It never comes alone. It always brings works with it. And then he goes on to describe what a dead faith looks like.
And it's pretty damning. He says it's just verbal. It's all talk.
It's totally ineffective.
Yeah.
His example is seeing someone who's cold and hungry and just saying, oh, I hope you get warm and find some food, without actually giving them a coat or a meal.
The lack of action proves the faith is hollow.
It has no substance. And then he makes this really sharp point. He says that this dead faith is just intellectual assent.
This is where he brings in the demons.
Yes. He says even demons are orthodox. They believe in one God. They know who Jesus is. They believe in a final judgment. And they tremble. But they are eternally lost.
That is a staggering thought, that you can have correct theology and an emotional response to it and still have the faith of a demon.
It's incredibly challenging. It shows that true living faith has to engage the will. It has to lead to action.
And he gives examples, like Abraham and Rahab.
Two very different people. Abraham, the patriarch, whose faith was proven by his willingness to act, and Rahab, a Gentile prostitute, whose faith was proven by a single physical act of courage. It shows that real faith moves you to do something.
Okay, so from works, James pivots to what is maybe the most practical and most difficult test of maturity, the tongue.
Yes, and he starts with a serious warning for anyone who wants to be a teacher or a leader.
He says they face a stricter judgment.
A stricter judgment, because their words carry more weight and have more potential to do harm. It's a terrifying thought, really.
And he uses these powerful images to show the tongue's power to direct things.
Two main ones. First, it's like the small metal bit in a horse's mouth. That tiny piece of metal controls a huge, powerful animal.
Or like the rudder on a massive ship.
Exactly. A tiny helm guides this giant vessel, and it can steer it to a safe harbor, or it can steer it right into the rocks. Our words set the course for our entire lives.
But it's not just the power to direct, it's also the power to
destroy, absolutely. First, he says it's like a small spark that sets an entire forest on fire.
A single piece of gossip, a careless comment.
And it can cause just massive, irreversible damage to a reputation, a relationship, a family.
His other image is poison.
Deadly poison. He says it's worse than a snake's venom because the wounds from the tongue are often incurable. They just keep poisoning a person's life.
What's really challenging is that James says it's indomitable, that no human being can fully tame it.
Yeah, that's the scary part. It's always active. And this leads him to the core inconsistency of the tongue. It's incoherence.
What do you mean by that? Incoherence.
I mean, he finds it fundamentally contradictory. How can you use the same mouth to bless God, the source of all life, and then turn right around and use it to curse or tear down a person made in God's image?
Right. He asks, can a spring produce both fresh and salt water?
And the answer is obviously no. So our speech shouldn't be this wild mix of piety and poison. What comes out of our mouth just reveals what's really in our heart.
So if it's indomitable, are we just supposed to give up? Is there any hope for controlling it?
Well, the indomitable part means we need divine help constantly, but we still have to do the work of restraint. We can use filters.
Like the 3 sieves of Socrates.
That's a great practical tool. Before you speak, ask, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it good or edifying? If you just paused for a second to run your words through that filter, imagine how much destruction could be avoided.
That's a powerful thought. So from the tongue, he kind of zooms out again.
He does. He connects our internal state to the conflicts we see all around us. He says the reason we have external wars, fights with neighbors, conflicts at work, even in the church, is because of the internal war.
The selfish desires raging inside us.
Those passions are the root cause of all conflict.
And that selfishness is especially clear when it comes to money and power, which leads to this really intense warning in chapter 5.
It's aimed directly at the wealthy, and the condemnation is just visceral. He calls them out for two main things. First, fraudulent acquisition.
Specifically, holding back the wages of their workers.
Yes. Under the law at the time, that was a grave sin. A day laborer's wage was often the only thing feeding their family that night. And James says the cries of those cheated workers have reached the ears of God.
And the second sin was the selfish use of that wealth.
Exactly. They were living in decadent luxury, total self-indulgence, while the people who earned them that money were starving. He warns them that the gold and silver they trust in, their false god, is going to rust, and that rust will testify against them at the judgment.
It's a heavy warning. So, since judgment is coming, what's his instruction for the people who are being oppressed?
One word: patience. He knows it's hard, so he gives them 3 examples to hold on to. The first is the farmer.
Right. The farmer plants a seed, but then he has to wait.
He has to wait. He can't control the rain or the sun. He waits for the early rains to make the seed sprout and the late rains to bring the harvest. It's an active waiting, knowing the harvest will come, but the timing isn't up to you.
What's the second example?
The prophets. They suffered incredible persecution. Many were killed, but they never stopped testifying faithfully. Their patience was one of steadfast endurance.
And the ultimate example of perseverance is Job.
It is. Job lost everything, his wealth, his children, his health. But James points out that the real reward for Job's perseverance wasn't just getting his stuff back.
It was something deeper.
Much deeper. It was a transformed understanding of God. Job goes from just hearing about God to saying, "Now my eyes see you." That's the ultimate outcome of patient endurance.
That focus on time and waiting brings us to one last really critical point he makes about humility, the sin of presumption.
Yes. The arrogance of planning your future as if it's a guaranteed thing.
This is the person who says, tomorrow we're going to go to this city, do business for a year, and make a profit.
Without any acknowledgement of God or, frankly, reality. James reminds us of 2 truths we love to ignore. First, our ignorance. We have no idea what tomorrow will bring.
And second, our fragility. That life is just a mist, a vapor. Here one moment and gone the next.
So the only mature, correct posture is to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that.
Anything else is just arrogance, acting like we're the ones in control of our own destiny.
And that's a sin, because it replaces God's sovereignty with our own.
So this deep dive into James, it really pushes us away from any kind of passive belief and just demands action. We have to see trials as tools, we have to govern our tongues, show real charity, and plan our future with humility.
That's it. True spiritual maturity. For James, it always moves away from glorifying ourselves and moves toward glorifying God and actively doing good for our neighbor. He shows that faith isn't a feeling. It's not an opinion. It's an observable way of life.
And he reminds us that trying to find security anywhere but in God is ultimately an illusion. So here's a final thought for you to take with you. Given that life is as brief as a vapor, what specific plan or ambition in your own life are you currently treating as a guaranteed certainty, rather than humbly submitting it to God's will? And what is one immediate practical step you could take today to move your faith from just mental agreement to active, observable service? Think about that for a while. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive. We'll be back next time with another stack of sources to unpack.